real is. Yeah, and the Psychiatric Association frowns upon these fake names and fake psychiatrists that are using this. And but they use it.
So basically, it's a situation where they can't get out from under it. It's like a catch-22 type
for the rest of their life. So even though he did commit a crime by what do you call it? Jailbait. You know, you're in your 20s and you're messing with somebody.
Someone 17 years old, 16.
It's called jailbait. So you go to jail, you come out. You're supposed to be able to come out and go back to your job.
How long has your son been locked up in preventive detention right now?
He's now 42 years old, and this happened when he was in his early 20s.
So he's been in over 15 or 20 years?
He's been in that system. So they have a cyclic system too, so that when they told us that, we were so shocked. But we got a lawyer and we had to get, it was like 3 years of going back and forth with the lawyer while he stayed in jail because they were trying to civilly commit him.
Without a charge? Without
a charge. He stayed in jail 3 years past his release time as we kept fighting. We finally, in 2012, at December 2012, were able to get him out of jail, not to go to civil commitment, but to be on conditional release. But the conditional release has like 3 pages of all kind of things, all kind of do's and don'ts and regulations.
Stuff,
right. And you have a probation officer that, you know, it's just constant. It's paid by the state to just find every little detail that you may do wrong. You know, if you got a ticket going too fast, or you got a ticket at parking wrong, or anything, just anything, whatever. And then he was out on conditional release for 5 years because he just watched himself and made sure that he was quote unquote perfect.
Was he locked back up after 5 years?
After the 5 years, we told the probation officer that we're going to go back to court to get him totally off of conditional release, to get that label removed, because they put a label on you called SVP, sexually violent predator, even though you've done nothing violent.
And so they don't make any distinction between crimes, whether you're talking about someone just looking at a magazine or doing something lewd in public versus rape or murder. Everybody's kind of lumped together. Is that correct?
That's right.
In Virginia,
wait a minute. Now we go to Miss Robin Garnett Baughman.
Right.
To give us a capsule of your situation with your son.
Okay. Well, my son was a teenager, and he had consensual sex with another teenager. He was tricked into pleading guilty. He was told he was going to go back to, he was a 19-year-old college student at the time. He was 14 when it happened. It's a long story. It's always a long story.
It was a capsulized.
But the capsulized version is he did 7 years in prison. They moved him. He's a young gay man. He was an opera singer at a prestigious college. They moved him 9 times in 7 years. When they decided they were going to civilly commit him, they took him from the lowest grade prison in Virginia and put him in Sussex, literally with someone, high security, literally with someone who had murdered a cellmate. And so it just to frighten him. A lot of these men get tricked or frightened into signing away their rights that they are sexually violent predators. My son and our family said, oh hell no, pardon my language, and we fought it. It took 2 years for us to be able to go to court. We did get him moved out of Sussex, but he was held without a new crime after he was supposed to be released for 2 years by
You
the
know,
state of
maximum
Virginia.
security prison
No,
without a
they
child.
did, we did get that part changed, and we got him moved to Arlington County. Most of the time, though, because he was a sexually violent predator designation, they were trying to try him for that. He was held in solitary confinement. He wrote a chapter in a book, Hell is a Very Small Place, that you can get on Amazon, about his experience.
He also did a TED Talk too, right?
Yeah,
TED Talk.
well, that's what happened next. So, he got out, he tried to go back to opera school. There's something called an interstate compact, so
Yes.
you're not free to just move around. And one judge called another, we assume, we don't know for sure, but it was in the works. The school had readmitted him, they were pleased to get him back, and which is huge. And he was not allowed to move back to Indiana just to go to school, or for any reason. So he came back here, he tried to make sense of what happened. He became the communications director for Cure National, and Cure International put on an international human rights conference with Charlie Sullivan in Thailand. He became just leadership, JLUS.
Soros Justice Fellow.
Yeah, and then he became a Soros Justice Fellow, both. He was working his fellowship, trying to make sense of what happened, and he figured out a release for some of the men. I can't go into details, but you were talking earlier in your synopsis of what's going on in the world about young people and what's happening to children. There are people whose predicate offense was as a child, and they have now been, as an adult, they did their time as a child, then they, as they go to release them, they civilly commit them, and then hold them in perpetuity. It could be for the rest of their lives.
Thank you.
So,
Let me cut
okay.
in. All right, Phil, you want to give us your take on this? This is Phil Fornaci, a good friend of ours, who's been on this show several times. And I've met Phil over many years ago. And he's always been on the front line, and you can trust what he says, and this man is really committed. Phil, what's your take on this civil commitment issue we're talking about this morning?
Well, I certainly share everybody here's outrage over this. This is a situation where people are held for not committing a crime because they might commit a crime in the discretion of legal authorities. So we hear about in both of these two cases, these are folks who, men who have served their time, they've served their sentences, and that's what's key to all of this. There is no sentence involved, there's no criminal allegation. But we think you might do something. It's also important to realize that you have to actually be held. You have to be in detention for them to start this process. So a lot of people may have served 5 years or something on some offense. They're trying to get their life together, and they trip over something while they're on parole, and they get rearrested. That's essentially what happened in Galen's situation. And so now that they have you in custody, they said, oh, well, now that you're here, we think we want to civilly commit you because we don't want you to ever leave. So it's preventive detention based on really a fake science. It's not real.
So what does the Supreme Court say about this?
Well,